Coming up next on Insights on PBS Hawaii, how can we best help the homeless? Aloha and welcome to Insights. I'm Daryl Huff from Hawaii News Now for Insights on PBS Hawaii. Homelessness is a growing problem in Hawaii, where more than 6,900 men, women, and children have no permanent shelter. That's more per capita than any other state. On Oahu, it seems like an endless shell game, with homeless swept away from one area, simply reappearing somewhere else. Makeshift encampments in Kakaako and along Kapalama Canal seem entrenched and growing. Summits have been convened and solutions offered, but the problem seems to have gotten worse as government officials bicker over what to do next. Tonight, how can we best help the homeless? Join tonight's conversation by calling 973-1000 if you live on Oahu, or 800-238-4847 if you live on a neighbor island. You can also join the live discussion by clicking the Insights logo at pbshawaii.org or send a tweet to PBS Hawaii using the PBS Insights hashtag. Now to our panel. Connie Mitchell is the Executive Director of the Institute for Human Services. IHS is the state's largest emergency homeless shelter. And Robert Binney was once considered chronically homeless, but through the help of IHS, he has a place of his own while he studies to become a math teacher. He's now advocating for the folks with whom he used to share the streets. Joy Manahan has been on the Honolulu City Council since 2012. His district includes Kalihi, where a homeless encampment along Kapalama Canal has raised community concern. He supports a plan to convert the former Hilo Hattie site in Iwilei into a homeless shelter. And Jun Yang is the executive director of the city's Office of Housing. His office has a key role in all of the mayor's homeless initiatives. Thank you all for joining us today. Robert Binney, let me start with you as a person who's actually experienced what we're talking about. What was it like to live on the streets of Honolulu, and where did you live and how did you cope?
I began on the streets in Waikiki, Ala Moana Mall, and the park area. I stayed in there a lot. I was more of a loner than I didn't group together with other homeless people, so I mostly stayed alone. Didn't trust anybody, didn't trust them at all. And I'd eat with the churches. Churches would bring food in. You know, I look different now, but I was really bushed out with hair and a big beard, and I'm sure I smelled pretty bad. I was drinking heavily and trying to intimidate everybody into staying away from me because I didn't trust anybody. I didn't like people. I didn't like myself. But
so what did it take to get you out of that life?
There was a long rainy span. It rained every day for about 2 weeks, and there was no tourists that would give me money. I got very hungry. I was wet and I was cold, and I was tired of being tired, and I had to walk all the way to IHS from the Ala Moana Park. It's a long walk. I went in there and they gave me a hot meal. And they tried to get me to stay there. They promised me a bed if I wanted one, and I didn't want to have any part of it. You know, I wanted to get back and get another bottle of booze. You know, and so I went back, and still raining. About 3 days later, I came back to IHS, and I was at the end of my ropes, just completely at the end. I'd been beat up already. I had everything stolen from me, and dogs are biting me. You know, the bus stops, I was getting people wanting to punch me at the bus stops, and so it just got really bad. And I went back to IHS, and somebody there was very kind. One of the staff was very kind to one of the residents was there, and it was probably the first time that I recognized that someone could be kind and not want something out of it, you know. And so against my own judgment, I took a bed there.
Well, let me move along now to Connie Mitchell. You were his host. Is it fairly typical that it takes a number of tries to get someone in, and do you hear this sort of story of a rock bottom situation before people are willing to seek help?
It varies with different people. For Robert, it took, really hitting rock bottom that way. For others, they're seeking help, when they come to the shelter, when they come to us in our housing programs. But I think for many people who have been long on the street, it does take a while. Some of them are really, dealing with mental illness or just afraid of people, like Robert was describing. So we really have to develop a relationship of trust, before we can do something sometimes. And sometimes it takes feeling uncomfortable, and that's when they'll make a different decision.
And ultimately, Robert, you ended up getting housing and getting out of the life. How does it feel now?
Well, after giving up drugs, giving up booze, giving up cigarettes, it feels like somebody took a cape and pulled it off of my head, and I can feel the sunlight now. And now it's been a couple of years, and the fog is starting to lift, and I'm starting to see how I was wrong about so many things, and it's an enlightening experience.
Oh, you look great. Thank you for being here. Jin Yang from the city. What have you folks learned about getting people off the street from your experience now? Is it a lot more complicated than it seems to people from outside?
It is, but what we're coming to find is we're using data for the first time. Well, I can't say the first time, but we're really coordinating all the information that we're getting through a coordinated intake and assessment with the city and the state. It sounds really complicated, but what it is we're doing surveys, and we're using these surveys across all of the agencies, across all the island. And we're taking that data to help us make the best decisions for our programs and our resources. So now that, for our chronically homeless, the city, through the Department of Community Services, and the state also has the program, Housing First program. We get to specifically focus that program for our chronically homeless, for people who've been on the street, and our caseworkers and our outreach specialists go out into the street and continually engage with individuals and homeless families on the street and say, hey, we have a place for you. We know that this is a good place for you. We have support for you. And we know that specific programs for targeted populations really do help.
Let me move to Joy Manahan from Kalihi. As a politician kind of stuck in the middle, you must hear it from both sides all the time. How big a concern in your district is the homeless encampments you have? And you mentioned you've got Kapalama, you've got the Nimitz Viaduct, and you've got Ala Park all in your district.
Absolutely. Those are all huge, huge concerns, and right now they become a priority for my office and for us on the City Council. Unfortunately, well, we have a Housing First program in the city. It's a federally funded program that basically takes people off the street, puts them into housing, and then we would provide services. And so it's called Housing First because we house people first and then we provide the wraparound services. But unfortunately, what we're finding, or what I've found in this process in dealing with our issues on Kapalama Canal and other parts of the district, is that there is a lack of housing and there's a lack of shelter space. And so what we're ending up having are people pitching tents on the street, basically.
Connie, but you go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that, but there's also sometimes an unwillingness to come off the street as well, because we have had shelter space and we have invited many people to come into the shelter.
That was the question I was going to ask. There's an assumption that there's not enough shelter space, but then I hear through working at Hawaii News Now that often when we're saying that, there is space. How do you explain that gap?
I think there are a lot of people who have experienced the fact that they're able to stay out on the street. If they want to, they don't need to come into the shelter. There are people that are feeding them anyway, and there are people that are providing a lot of what they need, and so they also develop a sense of community with other people who may be on the street. But ultimately, we do have space, but it's not a preferable scenario for a lot of people, so they don't choose to come in. And I can't blame them, if they really feel like they're getting their needs met elsewhere and they don't want to be in the shelter. We do have a few rules, that do need to be abided by, but if, they don't want to do that, then they're not likely to come in.
Robert, in your experience and talking a little bit about some of the people that you know, how big a factor is it people that just prefer the streets?
Well, if they have their needs met, like Connie was saying, if they're getting food, warm food, if there's a way for them to get their laundry done, if they can take showers at the bathrooms, at the water at the bathrooms, and take showers and do their laundry in the sink there, they have no reason to go to any of the homeless shelters.
So there, can I just say, from a policy standpoint, when we've addressed that issue at Kapalama Canal with the business owners and the different stakeholders in the area, what we've found from the input is that basically we call these enabling factors, and the enabling factors make a certain area, I guess, more desirable for a place to stay or spend the night for whatever reason.
Be specific about that. So, for example, what's the enabling factors at Kapalama? And I don't know that the average person has seen this. It is quite a striking image out there.
And it's changed within the last few months, you know, I mean, just from the looks of it. But I would guess that the biggest enabling factor over there is the running water, the proximity to the running water. And you can only imagine what folks are doing.
The running water, you mean the stream?
Yes, basically. It's basically, that's what it is. It's infrastructure.
So people are using the stream for hygiene.
For hygiene, basically.
But they're also using the businesses in that area, or I should say abusing some of the businesses, because they're tapping into their electricity and their water sources there. So, you know, if you find any encampment, you're going to have to find a place where there is running water and there is electricity, because they want to be able to tap into those things.
A hose and electric is what I always looked for.
What's that?
A hose, a water hose, and electric. I got smart and I got one of the little keys to open up the commercial water faucets.
Oh, you mean the little thing with the round end on it? Okay. All right. Let me, we'll go more into the encampments a little bit later, but I've got the first few questions coming in from the audience, and it kind of goes to the question of how did we get here? I mean, how do we get to be the state with the biggest homeless population per capita in the country? Is this something that, it's not new, I mean, we've been dealing with this for a long time, but it seems like it's exploded. I mean, Connie Mitchell, you've had a lot of experience with this. How did we get here? What happened?
Well, it wasn't overnight, Daryl. I think there have been so many trends that have been converging to this point. You know, in our state, we've seen a lot of affordable housing pretty much evaporate over the last 25, 30 years. Something to do about 40,000 units. You know, when units that were supposed to be affordable no longer needed to be affordable, they were sold off. So the housing,
and how big a factor is that? How many housing units do?
About 40,000.
That literally dropped off of the market.
Yeah. You know, and so you're really, you know, losing that much. If you're not building as much to replace them, then you're going to fall behind. So we're catching up now.
Junyang, in your prior life, you were with a nonprofit that did a lot of work on housing. How did that happen? Why did we end up losing so many units?
Well, so, and Connie was mentioning the loss of 40,000 units. There were some programs through HUD, Department of Housing and Urban Development. There are mortgage programs that allowed for development of small walk-ups and other larger developments like Kukui Gardens. Those programs, over time, the owners decided not to continue affordable developments and decided to convert them into condominiums or market. And at that point, a slow trickle turns into a stream, turns into a river. Next thing you know, we've lost 40,000 units. We're not building as fast as we can, and that's something that through Mayor Caldwell's administration, what we're trying to do is build up a stronger policy of building in more affordable housing, using ADUs, accessory dwelling units, as an option to say, hey, as a community, let's get into helping provide housing for our
Just to get back to the original thought, though, is that, so what you're saying, and I think that what Connie Mitchell is saying, is that we basically had sort of an economic cliff that we ran into because we had a period of time when we built a lot based on the federal money being available, and then the clock just ran out and we weren't ready with replacement units.
So we have an issue about supply. Then on the homeless program side, there's another thing that happened in previous state administrations where the Department of Human Services budget was completely slashed. We went from, the homeless programs office went from a staff of 12 people down to 2. This is an office in the state that runs most of the contracts throughout the state for emergency shelters, transitional housing, and other outreach programs and service programs. What that does is it really takes away from moving proactively and trying to find solutions to just running programs so that they can survive crisis mode.
Robert, I want to throw this question at you because you are originally from the mainland, and you know, we hear this a lot. And this is a caller from Kahului. The majority of our homeless are not from Hawaii. They're from the mainland. On Maui, 50% of the homeless are from the mainland. It's the mainland's problem. Is that your experience? Is it most folks from the mainland? And for you, you came here for work. You didn't come here to be homeless, right? So
I
see a lot of that?
I looked at the unemployment rate, and Hawaii was the second lowest. The lowest was North Dakota, and I was looking for work. And the fact that Hawaii was the second lowest, I just didn't want to be stuck in the cold in North Dakota working. So that was my purpose for coming here. I can't speak for other people, but that was mine.
But your observation, have you ever met people who were fully homeless on the mainland and then moved here because it was just a better place to be homeless?
Well, actually, I've heard similar, but on the mainland, there's other places on the mainland that are better to be homeless than there are here.
Go on with that. I appreciate.
Well, I don't want to get some of the other communities angry with me.
They can replace. They can remain nameless. But then, how are they better? For example.
Well, for one thing, the shelters are much better. There are better showers, better monitors that stay inside the homeless shelters to monitor the homeless people themselves. Better services built into the shelters themselves.
Did it tend to be spread around the cities too?
You've got your nurse right there. You've got a paralegal in that office right there that could help you get your driver's license so you can go back to work. Whatever you need, your taxes done. There's a big laundry area, big area for lockers where you have your own key to your own big locker. Mm-hmm. You know, and so there's a lot of really good places to be there.
Joey Manahan, you know, we were describing a couple of factors here. One was the loss of the affordable housing units, the slashing of housing services. Yeah. Was this the result of political decisions that were made, a failure of the political class to take care of this issue? Not that I'm blaming you, but you're the only politician at the table, so.
Well, I can't speak to the past, but you know what I'm experiencing now, and we just met with me and one of my colleagues, Councilmember Fukunaga, met with Governor Ige the other day, and we asked him for help, basically trying to coordinate efforts for a group or a population of homeless folks who are the COFA migrants, and we needed his help in being able to coordinate the federal, state, and the city and county services, but. You know, what I'm finding out there more is that we have a lot of families out there who need help right away. And I just don't see any relief in sight. And it's unfortunate because really it's really comes down to who's going to build the housing. And that's.
But you say there's no relief in sight, but you sit on the city council where there's presumably money available. I mean, do you think it's the job of the city to step up to this issue?
So people look to us for solutions, and as I mentioned, we have a Housing First program. We've housed about 40 people in the last year.
Oh, more than that
now. And it's like we just started about 6 months ago, and we've housed over 70 people.
Wow.
Okay. So we're housing about 40, 70 people maybe in a year. But there's 4,000 people out there who are unsheltered. And for us in the city, you know, that's what we would like to see is more of a partnership with the state and better defined roles in terms of who's going to build what kind of housing. Mm-hmm. Because really, I don't see anybody, no new developers will be able to build for the 60% and below average median income population without a subsidy from either the state or the city. And so what we are trying to do is coordinate or collaborate to be able to clearly define who's going to build transitionals and who's going to build the housing. What I've found out in that process is a lot of the land belongs actually to the state, and then we have our pot of money, and so we're trying to figure out how we can work together to make that happen.
Let me step back just a notch and ask Junyang, from the last homeless counts, who are the homeless? I mean, what are the big cohorts? I mean, there are many different pieces of this puzzle. Could you give me a quick list of how big is each sort of part of the population?
Well, just from the big pools, we're looking at how many unsheltered we have. Close to just around 1,900 are unsheltered on this island from our point in time count. It's a rough right now. The final draft will be coming out very soon. But we've seen an increase in our unsheltered count. For the total homeless population on any given night, we asked on January 25th of this year, much of the volunteers and outreach workers from IHS and from Waikiki Health and a lot of the partners in care organizations came out and went across the island over a week, and were able to find that somewhere near 4,900, I believe, are homeless, but not unsheltered. It's just homeless in shelters and transitional housing.
How would you describe the individual groups, though? I mean, we hear a lot. I mean, I know that out in Waianae, there's a very large group out by the harbor. Then at Kapalama, there's more Kakaako under the viaduct. But what are the sorts of people? I mean, is it mostly families? Is it mostly singles? Is it mostly local? Is it mostly mainland? I mean, really, what is the facts around those?
So we have, I'm just going through my head at what the figures are, somewhere near 600 chronically homeless individuals. These are individuals who are unsheltered, who are who've been on the street for more than a year, or four major episodes of homelessness in 3 years, and have a major disability. These are these are the focus for our city and state's Housing First programs. For those in the boat harbor, if we're looking, many of them may not be considered chronically homeless. There's a strong support network at the boat harbor. It's a long-standing encampment. We know that they're there. We have our service providers outreaching to them on a daily basis, and being able to provide services to many of them, encouraging people to come into transitional and emergency shelter, and hopefully even to permanent housing as well.
Connie Mitchell, how confident should we be about these point-in-time surveys? I mean, the idea that there's only 1,900 unsheltered homeless on this island, I think the average person's going to go, that can't be true. I mean, 1,900 is about half of the UH baseball stadium. And I feel like it's got to be way more than that.
And we always have said that it's an undercount, because it doesn't count people who are in the hospital or in jail, who are homeless on that particular night. And if there are people that maybe they were couch surfing that night, they wouldn't count either. So there's definitely more people than the point-in-time count indicates. But through the year, we will find a homeless service utilization report too, that indicates how many people availed themselves of services. But that also doesn't include the people who are in caves or in places that are hidden, because there are quite a few more that just hide.
But the point-in-time count, really, it's a tool. It's a tool for our community and for the federal government to better plan its resources. It's a trending tool for our community here and across the state to say, on this date, every year, we want to see a snapshot of what the need is for our community. And we do it across the nation.
So here's a snapshot. For Kapalama Canal, any given point in time, or at least from the last information that I have, we have about 75 individuals, anywhere between 75 and 100 individuals, 59 of whom have pitched tents and are part of a family unit. And of those folks, I would say a little more than half are COFA migrants, and the other half are just local folks who are just unsheltered, unfortunately.
But the biggest need that we have out of all of this, it really is permanent housing. And what Councilmember Monahan was talking about is this is the right time. It seems that the state and the city, we're all talking about affordable housing. The city and the state are coordinating with the service providers through Hale Malama and Partners in Care to coordinate our resources better. But we are talking about affordable housing. How do we build more of it?
I think what we'll do later on, after we take a break, we will go back to some of the specific solutions, some of the specific spots and so on. One of the things I'd like to ask Robert Binney, did you get the impression there's a lot of people that are just hiding out there that we're not seeing?
Yes.
Give me an example of where you think
I was one of them, so
right.
I'm constantly on the prowl for a good place to hide at night. And it's like, look behind this bush, there's somebody there already. Go over to beside this hotel, and
I'm sorry to laugh,
and look
but
over
I
there,
can
and
just
there's
see
already somebody there.
Oh my goodness!
So you keep searching until you finally find an open place.
Did you ever find yourself up in the bush somewhere, like on the slopes of Diamond Head? Oh, I heard about this in
roofs,
some places.
Because that way it's harder for somebody to come and stab me. It's safer.
And is your impression that there's a lot more out there that all these counts are
Absolutely. My guess is probably 4,000 right now.
Connie Mitchell, do you think that's possible?
I do think it's possible, because there are some places where we can't go into count that we know that there's people there too. It's just too dangerous in some places.
Junyang, on that point, what kind of resources are there? I mean, do we have enough shelter space for those folks? I mean, the city's position for a while was the compassionate disruption because they have a place to go, but it became clear that there wasn't enough places to go.
Well, when we first started that discussion, it was specifically for Waikiki. Because we were looking at doing enforcement in Waikiki because of the commercial nature of the area. And when we looked at the point-in-time count and some data from the Waikiki area, we made a decision and looked at the shelter availability on any given night. The availability, from my recollection, was somewhere around 100 shelter beds, 150 shelter beds on any given night. And from the data that we had, it showed that we had about 150 individuals in Waikiki that the enforcement may move people into and provide an opportunity for them to go into shelter.
Let me ask this question from Duncan on Maui. I was in Fort Lauderdale, and in the 50s and 60s, the police used to arrest the homeless. They were charged with vagrancy, loitering, and no visible means of support. I could be guilty of that sometimes. 30 days in jail and a $50 fine helped to stop it. Why don't we do this? Let me ask Robert, what do you think of questions like that? Do you think that
it's right on the money? Because I spent some time in California, and you don't see the tents up and down the streets there. And they do get arrested, and they do go to jail, and they do 30 days in time. And I guess they have to work for the county during doing the time so that they pay for their own room and board in jail. But you do not see tents on the streets there. So
would you support something like that here? Do you think that would be helpful?
If it's meaningful and helpful to the homeless, but if it's going to be a bunch of cops throwing lit, flares in sleeping bags, that's a different thing.
Joy Manahan, that's essentially the debate going on right now in your area.
Absolutely. So, I think there is a hesitation but we don't want to criminalize homelessness. I mean, that's the first and foremost. So we have introduced these measures which you've been seeing, which are the sit-lie measures, unfortunately, and we're trying to expand it into other areas. We've expanded it into Chinatown from Waikiki. And now the outer lying areas of Chinatown are being affected, and we're trying to expand it into those areas as well as Kapalama Canal.
Can I throw a question out to everybody? What does it mean, and I think I know what it means, but when we say we don't want to criminalize the homeless,
right?
Yet we're still citing people for not being in parks, we're citing people for sit-lie, we're trying to find laws so we can move them along. What does we don't want to criminalize the homeless mean?
Well, that's exactly it. And so, the best tool that we have, when we get the pressure from the public or from business owners, is, if we don't have a Housing First program, if there's no housing in the Housing First program, then, as I mentioned, all we can provide are services. The next best tool that we have are these sit-lie measures where we take people's property, unfortunately, and we get them. We disrupt them, but they're not working, and for as long as we don't have housing at the back end of that, that's always going to be the case. And so, if we went the next step, which is basically arresting people, as you mentioned, then I think that would open us up because we're not providing any alternatives in terms of shelter or housing.
But at the same time, Joey, I wonder about the fact of people saying that we're criminalizing homeless when, in actuality, if there are people, regardless of whether they're homeless or not, if they're doing certain things that are against the law,
absolutely,
they are committing a crime.
I agree.
So it's not criminalizing them because they're homeless, but people are committing crimes. If people are going and breaking into businesses and they're getting their water and electricity, right, they are committing crimes. So I think sometimes people forget that it's the behavior that people are saying shouldn't be doing.
Well, the basis of these bills initially were to provide public access to areas. Mm-hmm. For Waikiki and for the Chinatown area, the bills that we passed in the city were to provide space for people to come into, to be able to go into commercial spaces, businesses, right, at any time. That was the basis for it.
Let me ask a quick question though for Robert. When you're homeless, you end up in a criminal lifestyle, right?
You have to be. There's no other way. If you're living on the side of the canal, where are you going to dump your stuff? You're not going to walk down the street and knock on a business door and ask them to use their bathroom. You know, because first of all, they're already angry that they've been broken into twice. And even if you get 100 people down, there's going to be 5 of them that's going to be breaking in.
Okay, we're going to move on. I'm going to take a quick break here to remind our audience that tonight we're discussing what can be done to help the homeless. Please call, email, or tweet your questions and comments. Call 973-1000 if you live on Oahu, and 800-238-4847 if you're on a neighbor island. We got a call from a citizen in Honolulu. Can the homeless apply for welfare? What kind of jobs can we offer the homeless? Connie Mitchell, actually, you folks have been pretty successful. 1,000, I think I got information from you folks today that you folks have managed to house over 1,000 people, up to 1,400 people a year, mostly getting them access to government benefits, right?
Well, I think, you know, what we do is we kind of do an assessment to determine what is needed. And most people who are homeless do need to access some government benefits. So getting them general assistance, getting them health care is really important, you know, and getting them jobs. That is so important for people to regain their lives, you know, to find a way to have the resources to be able to then take care of themselves again. So we really do stress that, and it's not only IHS, we belong to Partners in Care, which is a whole consortium of service providers that are doing similar things. So there are people going out asking people, do you need help? So people have to make that decision though about accepting and wanting that help. And that's where, you know, the rubber meets the road, you know, is whether people want to make that decision. And sometimes it takes a while, like as, you know, Robert was saying.
Jun Yang, is there, do you think that at the next step from homelessness, there is enough services? If everyone who was on the street today said, okay, I give up, I'm going to go, would we be ready for something like that?
You know, I wish we'd be at that place right now. That would mean that we could tell both the city and the state, this is the amount of money we need for the resources. We could tell the federal government, this is what we need. But we're not there. I wish we could tell everybody who's on the street, we have a place for you, but we're not there. We don't have enough units. We don't have enough. The services we're providing through the city's Housing First program is a $2 million contract until October 31st, and a second year to service another 100. So it'll be 200 chronically homeless households across this island, 250 or 230. What it shows is that we have limited resources. And so we've had to focus our resources to those who are the most visible, but also the most vulnerable.
You know, that question, though, you know, we are talking about welfare, we are talking about VA benefits, we're talking about Housing First, but there's also other programs.
Absolutely.
I mean, really, if you add them all together, is there enough, and it's just a matter of connecting the dots?
For veterans, I believe that there are enough resources right now to meet their need. We're almost at, the mayor signed on to something called the Mayor's Challenge to End Veteran Homelessness by the end of this year. Now, the federal government through HUD has given us, to the city, Department of Community Services, another 80 vouchers to house specifically veterans. What we've come to find in our data is that we can meet much of the need that's in the community right now with the resources that we have in the community.
So it is, once again, it comes back to getting people to access the...
Well,
go ahead.
I would say that there are certain services that are just insufficient. Our mental health system is in disarray, and we really need more access, you know, to services there. Our Hawaii State Hospital is bursting at the seams. You know, our hospitals are full, and you know they're not able to serve.
Our prisons, our jails are full.
Yeah.
Our jails are actually, from my understanding, has got like hundreds of homeless people who, when they get out of jail, they end up back on the street. There's no transitional program for them. Robert Binney, on that discussion about the mental illness, what did it take for you? You know, what kind of programs were there for you when you were ready to access them? And do you think they could be successful for many more people?
Absolutely. You know, I went through my whole life just destroying everything around me, and everybody told me I needed help ever since I was a little boy. And I didn't ever get any help. Instead, I would get okay in my life for a year or two, and then it'd all blow up. And get okay for a year or two, it'd all blow up. It's just my whole life. And then at IHS, I didn't ask for any help. They had asked me if I would like to talk to one of their doctors. And I said, okay. And I went through their battery of tests, and I have bipolar, You know.
So at that point, until that time, you didn't really realize that
I knew I needed help. I knew that I was.
But you didn't have a
problem.
specific diagnosis. You managed to cope all the way through your
Yep.
life. Until
And
that
didn't
point.
care either, you know. And but as soon as I got my prescription, it completely changed me.
And then once you got your diagnosis, that opened the door to other services too, right? Did you ultimately
Yes.
get Medicaid and other
Yes.
sort of services?
Yes, but I want to let the viewers know that the general assistance is not permanent.
And it's only like
General-
$300 a month, right?
And it's a very limited time frame too. So people can't rely on general assistance to live.
Okay, let me ask Connie Mitchell. Give me a sense of, and these questions keep coming, so I don't think we've quite answered it. Is that what is the breakdown of the homeless between lost job, I'd say economic problems, mentally ill, and wanting to live on the street? I appreciate this question being, fairly specific.
I want to first answer that last one. You know, I don't think anybody wants to live on the street, but I do think that people make choices sometimes to remain on the street. Now, getting back to mental illness, if you take the people who are on the street now, unsheltered, I would say that if you're not mentally ill to begin with, if you live for a time on the street, you will probably develop depression, anxiety, because you're always vigilant, wondering somebody's going to attack you or not. Substance abuse is very high. I would say that probably if you're an individual, the families are not as much, but if you're an individual, I'd say maybe about 60–70% of them are experiencing substance abuse also. So, it depends which group, but then you also have a large number of people who are in shelters already, and they may not have as high a rate of, the substance abuse and mental illness, but of course we're really quick to triage them and get them, into services and get them well.
Someone finally did ask a question that I was a little afraid of. I'll give it to you, Jun Yang, because you're actually paid to deal with this kind of question. Is that we have a lot of stereotypical reaction to the concept of Micronesian people who are coming here due to the Compact of Free Association, the migrants there. And I recognize that within that group, there are a number of subgroups. How much is the COFA issue affecting the homelessness? And how do you parse that between COFA as a problem or certain groups within the COFA immigration have developed certain habits?
Well, I'm going to say that the COFA migrant population being a substantial part of our homeless population, it is something that we have to deal with as a community. That includes the city and the state and our service providers. We see many of our COFA migrants in the Kapalama Canal, in other parts of the island, in Kakaako. It's something that we are looking to and hoping to engage our federal congressional representatives as well, because it's the Department of Interior. They have the contracts between the COFA nations.
Yeah, before we get too involved in the acronym, the COFA is Compact of Free Association, and it's basically an important relationship that we have with these folks because we basically took over their lands in order for military purposes. But Joy Manahan, there's a large number of these folks in your district. What are you hearing when you appeal up to the federal government or to the congressional? What are you hearing about the chances that there will be some help offered the state to deal with this challenge?
Well, I don't think there's any help in terms of additional funding, not right now, but we are trying to appeal it. I was just talking to Connie before the show, and we had a task force 8 years ago trying to quantify the impact to our services, but not just our homelessness services, but also our Department of Education, our Department of Human Services, our Department of Health, and our HPHA. And so I don't think we've moved on that, on the task force recommendations.
A lot of the recommendations that came out of the legislative task force, were not really followed or even looked at.
Is this an issue of Congress?
Pardon me?
Is it purely an issue of Congress?
I don't think it's purely an issue of Congress. I think all of us have to own up to it. But, we all have to work together to be able to solve it. And so that's what we're really trying to do.
And
really,
absolutely, I apologize to cut in, but when we look at going out and talking to the families, many people are working. So
right.
I want to dispel the notion that these are just individuals just sitting there all day.
Right.
Many of these individuals are working, many are families, and they have a strong family structure. It's just a matter of there's not enough housing. Something may have happened where one family member has gotten the whole family evicted out of some housing, and so they're in a situation on the street.
And that's true of many of the families that are on the streets. You know, I've got several questions here that go to a very heart-wrenching piece of this, and that's the children. I don't hear statistics about the numbers of homeless men, women, and children, only a total number. What's the breakdown? I think let's interpret that as being, you know, how many children do we have living on the streets? And on top of that, how do we make sure they're being taken care of? And how do we stop them from becoming homeless adults? Connie Mitchell, you want to... You have a family shelter as well.
We do, and ours is not the largest family shelter, I don't believe, but certainly the children are of concern. I don't have the exact numbers, but I do recommend people to go on the website, the city website. There's a point-in-time count that shows you all the numbers, you know, relative to the different breakdowns. And you know, for the children, I think my concern is that we really want them to be able to go to school. You know, when you're homeless, it's not easy for them to be in school consistently sometimes. And so one of the primary things we do is make sure they're in school and they're doing okay in school. You know, if they're not, then we're wanting to provide more resources.
Joy Manahan, what are your concerns? You see these kids living along the canal and so on.
Absolutely. I was there one morning and I saw some kids getting picked up by a school bus, and I was wondering what, you know, who's providing that service, because we don't really have school buses in Kalihi. The schools are in close proximity where, you know, you can most kids walk to school.
Oh, so it's sort of a random school bus.
It was
Hopefully it had something to do with the school.
It was strange, but at the same time, it just looked like life was so normal. But in one of our meetings, community meetings that we had, the Princess Kailani folks, PK Elementary, which is also in the district, came out, and I don't have the exact number, but they were saying something like 30% of their student body is on some kind of a meal program, and so that is a concern if these kids are homeless, that many, first of all, and what do they do for food when their school's out?
Is there Junang, do you think that there is a cycle that happens, or do you think this is not, again, people don't want to be homeless, but I mean, the viewer was asking, is there a sort of a cycle that homeless children will end up being homeless adults? Or maybe it's just the opposite, they get inspired. We know of one young lady who's one of the more inspiring stories who managed to get her high school diploma and is now working through college.
That's right.
I think there's a lot of great stories of people rising up.
There are, and I'm going to take us away from the, picking yourself up by your bootstraps. It's really community building up individuals and families and providing the support and opportunities to do so. Yeah. But you also have many people who've been many generations of homelessness. Out in Waianae, there are, people are telling me of 3 generations of homelessness. A grandmother, daughter, and her granddaughter now living on the beach, never having ever experienced what it is to be inside a building.
Robert, did you observe families living on the street?
All the time. And when you do see those parents sending their kids off to school, that's real inspiration, because they have to go through so much to get those kids to school.
I wanted to just add that the statistics do show, though, that if a child grows up in homelessness, that they are twice as likely to experience homelessness themselves when they grow up. So I think we really want to pay particular attention to the children because we have an opportunity to actually make an impact. But it really is difficult if, say, the parents are mired in drug use, or alcoholism. They don't have any normal models.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so it's just whatever they see. And so it's really an important thing to be able to show them what other normal could be,
And some success stories. We had one family living in the park over by Sandra's Piano. They disappeared for a while, but they showed up again in urban Honolulu. One of our Housing First programs was able to provide housing for them really quickly because they were a chronic homeless family. Those 2 children are around the same. The oldest daughter is about the same age as my daughter, who was about 5.5. getting them in housing. That was important.
Let me start moving into some of the proposed solutions that people have been sending me. There's quite a pile here. One interesting, we've heard that the faith-based organizations sometimes have a tendency to actually exacerbate the problem by making food available and just going down and feeding, you know, with always the best intentions, obviously. Here's an idea. The City Council should reach out to the churches. They would supply many volunteers to staff the housing administration and shelters. What do you think of that as an idea, Joey Manahan?
The thought has crossed my mind. At this point, you know, I'm open to anything. We have made a proposal. What we had envisioned in the city was the idea of purchasing existing property, in this case Hilo Hattie, where we would be able to co-locate all our services in one place, but also provide some sort of transitional shelters for immediate relief. I mean, for folks to get people off the streets immediately and then provide them the services that they would need, all in one place.
Let me ask another question, and this kind of goes to the economic situation. It says there's 22,000 illegal vacation rentals in this market. Did anybody here have a sense of whether that problem is part of this problem?
Yes, we feel on the council that that is also part of the problem. That's the loss of any conversion in that sense. When you convert a home into a TVR and you do it illegally, we don't know how many are out there, but you're losing housing, and so we don't know the numbers of the real numbers of how much housing we are losing in that sense.
Do we have any idea of how much it would cost? Let's just not say the City Council. This question is specific to the City Council. How much would it cost to generate enough affordable housing units to take care of this problem?
We threw on some numbers within the city. We're looking at, if we were trying to house every single person, say families, is in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Yeah. Because each unit, if you were to say, I'm going to build a unit on average being about $250,000 to $300,000 a unit, it will cost us quite a bit of money.
Well, what about these ideas about micro units, housing people in shipping containers? I mean, is that stuff being taken seriously?
We are looking at that, absolutely.
Why don't we have it already?
Well, we're working on that, and that's the exciting part. So Sandy Fund, who is the director for the Office of Strategic Development, I think she's just had an opportunity to talk with the press about some of the projects that are happening in Waianae. It's an opportunity to say, we're going to try something and see if we can make it work. Make it work here, make it work in other places. And I got to give it to her and her staff. They are looking outside of the box to see, can we build something quickly, efficiently, safe, and a very attractive housing for people with very, very low means.
Robert Biddy, do you think that that would be appealing to people who are living on the streets?
Certainly.
Anything?
Oh, yeah. Very nice.
Now, you managed to find yourself an apartment of your own.
Yes.
Private landlord?
Yes.
And then, is there a shortage, though, of private landlords willing? Is there a stigma that's associated? Did you have to overcome a sort of a stigma when you went and met the person, or how did you do that?
Yeah, well, first impressions are really important. You know, I didn't go there with a beard and messy hair. And my caseworker went with me, and he was a very good spokesman for me. And without him, I'm sure I couldn't have got it.
Connie Mitchell, are you out pounding the bushes, beating the bushes, trying to get people willing to offer their homes?
We absolutely are. And it does take, really communicating with landlords and letting them know that it is, not like a negative thing, to do necessarily, that there are advantages actually to allow us to use your unit.
Tell me about those, because I had heard a little bit about that before, and it's actually fairly generous, right, if you're a landlord?
Right, because what we do is, we're paying market rents, and it's within a fair market rent though, but it is, and we also provide the support to the person who's living there. If something goes wrong, they can call the housing specialist, and then if somebody leaves, and they're unexpectedly gone, and you need to find another person in there, we're right there with another tenant. So, really, we're saving them some costs there.
The check never stops.
Yeah.
Joy, as appealing as a former landlord, but Joy Manhattan, do you think that people in your district who are complaining about the homeless might be willing to start offering more available rentals to them? Have you ever had conversations with folks about that?
Well, you know, in my district, we already have so many multifamily homes. A single home in Kalihi will typically house at least 3 or 4 families, and that's a full house, you know. So you have 10, 15 people living in one house, and you know, I can't imagine anybody getting turned away. But I mean, it's really hard to get a place. So,
and I guess what you're saying too is that now many of your folks in your district are not that far from being homeless themselves. They could have a fight with their relatives, and they're on the street.
Literally, and so that's the 60% and below that I'm talking about. And so we feel, you know, in the City Council that there are opportunities with transit-oriented development to be able to leverage infrastructure or leverage land to be able to subsidize developments precisely to create housing for that 60% and below. And that's the only way we're going to be able to create it, is through a partnership with the state.
You know, this is something that I think is an important question, just came through, is that we're, you know, as I understand, the elderly are at very high risk of becoming homeless. I know the city just announced plans for elderly housing, but aren't we heading for an explosion here? I mean, Chunyang, are we ready for this cohort to really blow up on us?
We are looking at, for affordable housing, we know through the studies in the past and studies that are going to be coming forward that our need is 20,000 or more affordable housing units for our island. And for those who are renting at 80% of area median income and below, that's a family of 4 making $76,000 a year. For an individual, somewhere around $50,000 or $40,000. For many of our seniors, or those who are going to become seniors very soon, they're on fixed incomes. So we have to, as government, begin to plan for those individuals and those families. I'm excited to say, you know, for the River Street property is Hawai'i residences. We have a project that we believe, hopefully, as negotiations continue, will be able to be realized, and we'll be able to house 151 senior units at that site. But really quickly, from the data that we've been able to compile through the outreach and surveys within the community, something called the Vulnerability Survey, we were able to find that the chronically homeless, over half are 61.5 years old. They've been on the street for more than 8.5 years. Our data is telling us this. It helps us to see where are the opportunities, the resources, and the asks need to be made. So when we're starting to serve our chronically homeless, we can then say, hey, senior developer, can you provide 1 or 2 more units for us, for our chronically homeless who've been on the street for so long?
Some of the ideas that have popped up recently, we talked a little bit about the Hilo Hattie's place. Yeah. Here's one, is it possible to use the land that was planned for the Obama Library to assist the homeless? I think it already is being used for the homeless. Unofficially. You know, these encampments, though, you mentioned that the Waianae encampment, you said you know who those folks are. There's a lot of support services there. To a certain extent, is the no action option part of what's being considered here? You know, the question comes from the Law Center for Homeless and Poverty, or that, you know, don't criminalize the homeless, you know, give a homeless Bill of Rights. I mean, is there an option of just sort of letting things be and just getting used to this population? Is that an option?
Is that the best? Is that the best quality of life for all of our citizens on this island? I don't believe so. I think we should aspire and have a vision that we're going to provide every opportunity for housing for everybody. I mean, it doesn't mean that everybody's going to say and take it, but at least provide the opportunity to do so.
There's a suggestion for a decommissioned cruise ship to put in a deep dive harbor at Waianae. You know, we had the Sand Island location. Robert, as a person who was on the street, do you think that telling people that to go to a place like Sand Island would have had any effect?
It's a long walk down that hot street. There's no bus service.
So for us to imagine what will work, you have to kind of put yourself in those shoes.
It's easy to say something, but, you know, that's a long walk. I've walked it just to go out there and watch the Raptors take off, and it's a long walk.
Okay. But when, you know, they brought up the shelters out in Kapalama, they realized they needed to have bus service, so the bus service was put in. So I can imagine that if you were to use land that's available to provide affordable units that people wouldn't mind living in, and providing the transportation and other services around there, a little landscaping wouldn't hurt, to just make it a lot more warm and hospitable. But I think it could be a possible solution for some people.
It's actually nice out there.
Yeah, it's close to the beach.
Yeah.
Jun Yang, let me ask this question. I mean, are we really tough enough on developers who are, right now building million-dollar homes? The Kakaako just said, we don't think 15-year rentals is enough. Yeah. I mean, quickly around the table, I mean, what's the best way to get more affordable units built?
Getting everybody involved. So we are asking developers to participate, but we're all through the ADU, the accessory dwelling unit bill that's going through City Council. We are also asking the entire community who have homes that have extra space on their property that are willing to say, I do want to get a little bit more income. Why don't I participate in some way to house some families here? Ultimately, I think that what we're hearing here is that the root cause of a lot of this is the lack of housing. And, I've only got about 30 seconds, but I'll let Joy Monahan.
So to help the developers, the only way we can do it is have clear roles from the city and the state, be able to leverage what we have, which is land or infrastructure, to help them be able to create this subsidized housing for the 60% and below AMI.
And Robert, I just wanted to say we got a couple calls from people who said they're very inspired by your story. They really appreciate you being here. And I appreciate all of you being here. We are now going to be talking about our next show, which is about lawmakers setting a 30-year goal that would take Hawaii from being the most oil-dependent state in the nation to being the first state powered completely by renewable energy. On the next Insights, is a 100% renewable energy goal attainable? That's next time on Insights on PBS Hawaii. I'm Daryl Huff. A hui hou.